right, we're going to start back up again, starting with Sam and town buildings. And you have quite a lot of maintenance and stuff in your budget this year, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me talk. Hopefully, I won't drag on for too long. Hopefully, the narratives were helpful as far as the building maintenance, because it can get kind of tedious to get into each and every one of those. Overall, you'll see that there's a relatively large increase in government buildings. I think that's kind of driven from our building study that was done, but then we took a real-world approach, went around and did multiple site visits with our facilities worker, Matt, and along with Ab and myself, and just tried to look at these buildings from a realistic point of view and what actually is the number one priority and how can we kind of chip away at these blocks and kind of get things moving forward in better condition and better preserved. So that's really what you'll see. Most of this work, I tried to know if it was in-house work or contracted services. There's very little contracted services in this budget for building maintenance in general, building washing and some painting services, like for the gazebo. Other than that, all the other work that you see in there is in-house work. As far as buildings go, probably some of the more notable things is the painting and roof work on the gazebo on the lawn out here. And then this building needs new storefront doors out front that have ADA compliant openers, and then some repairs to sheds, outbuildings, things like that, transfer station, cottage. I would not say that there's any major projects listed within the budget. The CI or the capital has obviously the roof repairs for this structure and some other things that were added, but buildings is mostly just kind of catch-up work. So I don't know if you guys have questions specifically about any buildings or projects in general. We have gotten back almost all of the quotes that we needed for contracted services. I think there's one or two that we're waiting on just for finalizing what it's going to cost to get buildings washed, windows washed, things like that, versus what it's going to cost for us to do in-house. So you might see a small adjustment in the coming weeks, but nothing major. I think we're pretty well nailed down. So.
Okay. I have a quick question for electricity, which we've got electricity in every single sort of department head's budget. So, Lynn, do you want to talk about how you adjusted that number first? And then next question, fuel and oil. So if you want to address both of those before we start in.
So if I knew what they were all going to do, I'd be rich because I'd be buying futures. So it's really hard to get into a number on those things. For fuel, what I do is we have an account with one company. They fill everybody, including the library, and we lock in a very low rate. For 2026, our rate is $1.50 per gallon. So I just tried to adjust that up a little bit because I just feel like with inflation, what it's doing, and I just feel like that's going to go up. I don't know. I'm not tied into that. We used to have someone who was really good at that, and they are no longer here. So I'm just doing, honestly, a best estimate of where those are going to go. Same thing with electricity. We've seen that Eversource is going up. Even community power is going up. So I have increased those numbers. And I know it's a lot on some of the buildings, but based on the actuals and where we're looking and what I'm seeing now, that's what I've determined should keep us afloat on those. Water, I've adjusted a bit. We didn't get hit with the rate that I thought we were going to based on the new bond that they have, but that may not have hit because of the timing of the bond. So I'm expecting a jump in the water costs. And sewer, sewer might go up. It might stay pretty flat. So yep. I've left those. I haven't gone too much up on those. That's kind of it.
Can I ask you a quick question too, Lynn?
Yeah.
What do you think precipitated us coming so close for fiscal year 25?
Well, I think some of it, and I think Sam will agree, is that we went over on a lot of building maintenance, a lot of repairs, a lot of unforeseen things that just didn't come out of capital reserves. We didn't have a place for that. I think that I'm a little nervous for fiscal year 2026 because we did tighten and sharpen our pencils, to use the idiom that everybody uses. So we may come in close, but I think that Sam is doing a good job of juggling with the whole, like, yes, we have a repair, it's in the plan, let's defer. I think we will not see the giant numbers in 2026 that we saw in 2025 for repairs. I think that was a big piece of why we were over. So I'm hopeful that we can manage that through
So
the capital piece.
we were fine with regards to utilities.
We were fine with utilities, I believe. We were okay. Every department was okay within their department. We didn't overspend on, wages, anything like that. It was just this other piece,
Okay.
and a majority of it was the buildings.
And for a lot of your maintenance and repair items that you've listed throughout, I did a quick total this morning. It's like $265,000. Are we going to use capital reserve money for that?
Out of the projects that is within this budget? Is that like within the narratives? No, and that was the point of doing it the way we did, was trying to just kind of take projects on bit by bit instead of kind of going with renovations. I'm going to actually thank Lynn for kind of breaking the ice on why last year's budget was probably over. And I figured that question was going to get asked, and I was going to say, well, I guess that was ultimately Public Works that kind of had that fault because of our building maintenance. Now, in the 2026 budget, when we built that, the one that we just are starting in now, last year, remember when I came to the budget committee and you folks, it was the largest increase again was buildings, because we have lines that have consistently been budgeted at 5,000 to 6,000, but the line showed us spending 35,000. So like the realistic decision was we need to just go to what our actuals are, and we took averages and such. So that's what we did for the 2026 budget, and it looks like so far that's projecting out well. The 2027 budget kind of has that same idea in it, but we've added like detailed projects. So we're gonna like kind of start scheduling these projects out. And that's kind of a big undertaking for us, but it's gonna hopefully alleviate these peaks and valleys in the budget in general. So I'm pretty hopeful that through the 2026 budget, we won't have this shortfall at the end due to facilities, because I do think that facilities was a major contributing factor to that with the 2025 budget. As for kind of going back to your question too about capital, there's projects in here, like the fire station is an example, and Whipple / the police department, in the sense that the facilities report talks about major renovations or things that need to be done, like sprinkler system upgrades at the fire station, like 5 to 8 years, and electrical services at the police station. Those projects don't make sense to undertake at this time until we know what we're doing with these buildings. They are not at critical failure. They are not in failure. They're not costing us a lot of money in the sense of the things like that are specifically listed. And so like this building is supposed to have a 3-phase power service, but it only has single, so we have like a power inverter. And to upgrade the electrical service would be like $200,000. Well, we didn't add that to the budget because if this building doesn't remain part of police, it won't need 3-phase power. So we don't want to invest this money into these buildings unnecessarily and then realize that, oh, okay, we did that, now we don't need that. So we tried to take a really real-world approach to just preserving these buildings and getting them up to where they need to be, so that when decisions are made, you haven't invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into Bucher or into the fire station and then renovating it 5 years later or adding on to it. So this budget really reflects a lot of that kind of like real-world approach to it. So.
So why don't what should we do? Building by building, or do you guys have any specific questions about the town buildings? We've got Academy, Whipple.
Building by building, just a brief conversation would be helpful, just
Okay.
for us to have an understanding as to what are the big issues with each structure, what are the kind of problems that we're looking at.
Yeah, so we can do that for sure.
Yeah, just maintenance and repair, I think. Maintenance and repair for each building. I mean, your narratives are awesome, but we should probably put it out to the public.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this
Yep.
forum.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. So I guess we'll just kind of go through how the budget's built, and we'll just drop down through each one. Academy building, you will see, is probably the one that stayed the most level in maintenance and repair. It's probably one of the best conditions of buildings we have. It also just doesn't get a lot of heavy use in the sense of commercial use, like these other buildings like police, fire, public works, they're just getting, a lot of inside, outside kind of traffic. So that one's pretty much staying the same at 15,000. Last year was 14,000. The thing that is getting covered in there out of capital reserves is there's a separate project to do the HVAC and heating system that's in the CIP plan. I think that was $44,000 from memory, and that was based on an actual quote that we got from our contractors that do our HVAC work. So, as far as Whipple, this is one of the ones that kind of increased substantially. It was about a $10,000 increase from last year. Part of that is the building needs some small mortar repair work done. It also needs, like I said in the beginning, like a new front door / storefront door that it's like ADA compliant, so there's a push button opener and things like that. We've been trying to get more detailed numbers on what that could potentially cost because it's not a service that we could take on in-house. So that number I think is a little high potentially, but we also don't know what we're going to get into as far as the condition of the building. So I think that's a little bit of an unknown, but I've tried to, as accurately as possible, kind of project that based on what I've seen other towns spend on doing a similar project and what I can find online for prices. This building also has a planned renovation for the slate roof. It is not, in the CIP, it's listed as Whipple roof. It's not a replacement of the roof, it's just maintenance to the slate that's there, the flashing, the gutters. As you walk up, the Seamans Road sidewalk, you can see that the wooden gutters are in pretty poor condition, and when it rains, it just floods down the side of the building. That was noted when this building was evaluated a few years ago and the interior renovations were done, that if we didn't do this project on the exterior, you would be, destroying parts of your interior surfaces. So we want to make sure that we get that done. But again, that's in the CIP.
I have a question on
Yeah,
this one.
please.
So we have maintenance and repair line at 33.5, but then what's this other town buildings? Because I don't see a narrative. What does that mean?
Yeah, other town buildings is listed differently in my narratives than it is in here, but that's great. So other town buildings are buildings that don't have necessarily like heat and electricity, or they're separate like water meter or sewer meter or electrical meter. So like the gazebos are considered that, or like outbuildings and sheds, like the ice skating rink building, that's considered other town buildings. The gazebo in Elkins, that's another other town building. The main gazebo out here is an other town building. So like the painting of that is put into that other town building line.
So this 25,000 is the painting of the gazebo?
Yep, we just got the quote back on that, and that
Okay.
stayed pretty accurate. So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
And it kind of like miscellaneous things, sheds, things like that. Like if Jay had repairs to the shed that he had placed and things like that, that would come out of other town buildings. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, absolutely.
Sam, would that include the building behind the library? Or you're not dealing with that?
I have not done any repairs to that. I don't think Public Works does in general. Richard?
Is that what, I don't know what it's called, but.
Yeah, the garden shed is the responsibility of the library.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have the fire station next. This is one of the ones that you'll see a relatively large increase, and it may look large on this paper, but if you look at the buildings report that was done, that number should have been much, much larger. The fire station does need siding, window trim, some flashing, repairs like that that aren't exactly cheap. It is work that we plan to kind of do in-house, but it does need to be done because if we do not protect that exterior surface, we're going to start having structural damages that need to be done. So I'm just catching up in my narrative section here to make sure I'm not missing anything. There was some brick repointing that needs to be done as well on like the drip edge sides of the building. We've seen this issue before here at Whipple. We've tried to take it on in-house, but it's just not the same as someone that's actually a mason that's qualified to do brick repointing and stuff, and it's turned out to be a little bit more tedious and detailed work than we're really able to take on. So that would be like a contracted service that we'd have to hire. So.
Okay.
Highway Department is next. This is a little bit interesting. So you'll see a very large number, and it seems kind of askew because of the situation we have going on, but that's where the rentals of the trailers that are at Public Works come from. It was the only place within the Public Works budget where we thought it would make sense to take that money from, because I don't want to take it from lease of equipment and things like that, because that's not really what it is. It's part of facilities. So that covers the rental of the 2 office trailers, plus any like small repairs that need to be done to the existing buildings there, such the 10,000 square foot lower shop is still a building that we want to preserve and keep in good condition, so. Transfer station, this includes the 3 buildings there, the cottage, the recycle building, and the compactor building. And all of them need some level of siding, trim, roof repairs. The cottage probably being one of the more notable ones of just some repairs that need to be done, deferred maintenance in general that we're catching back up on. So nothing extreme, and I don't think the increase is, for 3 commercial buildings, I think that's still a relatively good deal for what we're gonna provide, so. Some of these numbers, for my own curiosity, I went out and got quotes on what it would cost, and one siding repair at the transfer station was like almost what we're projecting to maintain all 3 of those buildings and kind of bring them up to a better standard ourselves. So the beach houses are both, I'm going to just kind of cover Elkins and Buckland in one because they're kind of similar. Those just need basic siding replacement, trim, and paint all around. So. Sorry. Hydrant services, that one is set by Lynn. She works with the water precinct to cover that one, along with the town clock. That was another surprise cost of last year's budget that was not budgeted for. Usually the town clock is kind of a relatively low maintenance item cost, but due to the repairs that need to be done, that's where you see that spike. But we do not project us needing that extensive of repairs again. I think the only last ones I have is the Pleasant Lake Dam. We do have some minor construction repairs to do to the dam. It's significantly down from last year just because we're currently working with Wright Pierce on a dam breach analysis and our normal permit fees and things like that. So that is a decrease because the structure that's there is in good condition. The dam actuator was replaced 2 years ago, and then this year, or this budget that we're in, we're doing the dam breach analysis, so that's in great condition. The Elkins Post Office, this is probably the most volatile one of all the buildings in the sense of sensitivity of the building. I think that building is in relatively poor condition. It's a very old structure that has had many lives. It was a restaurant, then I don't remember what it was called, I guess a camp house, and then now a post office. So it's kind of lived many services, and it shows in the condition of it and then the age of the building in general. So there is a line in the CIP that's a few years out to do about a $150,000 renovation of that building because it needs it structurally and just on a renovation base. But I think that's a good topic for the selectmen to discuss in the future of if you feel that building is worth investing that kind of money in. The money that's in there for this budget year is just, again, to preserve the building and do the best we can to make it last as long as possible until a decision's made, renovation or replacement, so.
Have they signed the lease for that building?
They have not. They increased the rent slightly, so I get like $1,200 instead of $1,100, but they have not sent out nor talked about a lease since last year. So we're month to month right now with them.
So we don't know whether or not the federal government is considering not using that particular.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know who to reach out to find out if they want to continue that.
Elon Musk isn't there.
Elon Musk? All right, I'll call. No.
Sam, do we utilize the second floor of that building, or is it strictly the post office that utilizes the second floor?
Second floor is utilized by the post office for the most part. I mean, there is some junk up there for sure, but most of it is the post office storage. There's some, I had not been up there until recently, and there's some chairs and things like that that might be old town chairs that got stored there, but for the most part, it's post office storage, so.
I'm just curious, and especially because I don't want to touch the topic. If the post office were to say, if the postal service were to say we're done with Elkins, do you have any thoughts on what we might utilize the building for?
That is, ooh, seat's hot.
That's why I figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, I think it would depend. I think if you were to remove the let's say the post office just didn't exist in there and so you had an empty structure. I think the first thing to do would be have a couple companies come in and look to evaluate if the building was worth keeping and, what that would cost as an investment. As far as what the building could be used for, I guess I don't know. I don't want to speak for another department. I've always thought that'd be a cool rec building or something like that, potentially. Rec office. I don't know. Maybe Putnam's rolling his eyes at me right now. I can't see. I do think Adam claimed it as office space if it was to ever be vacant, but I'm not going to argue that one either. I do think the building could have use, but I do think it would depend on what that cost would be. So to get it up to a standard that you would want to utilize as. It's also interesting because the renovations that were done to make it a post office are pretty extensive. If you haven't been in there, I don't think they're going to just let anybody walk in, but as the selectmen, I think you go in and they're very nice in there and have let us kind of go through a couple different times and take a look around. And it is definitely been altered in many ways to make it a post office, and it's unique, so.
I note with interest that you didn't mention select board offices.
Ooh, maybe that's a better idea. So I think that is all of the buildings, unless you guys have any other further questions to those.
Nope.
No?
Thank you for the detailed narrative.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, in terms of, you mentioned, for example, a lot of siding and painting and flashing, et cetera, that needs to be done. Is this stuff that was just deferred for years, do you think, or is it just sort of, again, the normal ongoing perpetual replacement of siding and things like that?
I think it's mostly deferred, and some of it is also just, siding failing after 50 years. But I do think some of it's deferred or was ignored to a certain degree. So it takes sometimes a study and fresh blood to see these things. So, yeah.
Tell me, how are the construction trailers working for you and for the rest of your people?
I think overall good. Throughout the summer, the crew was very happy to have a space that was air conditioned. Before we didn't have air conditioning in the offices, so they kind of like that. It will be interesting once we get into colder weather to see, because in the summertime, we either on job sites or we'll still enjoy sitting outside at picnic tables, or I say we, the crew in general, everybody. And also Public Works is a little broken up where we have a transfer station and wastewater that have offices that sometimes people will go to if they're kind of closer to proximity to that. So I think once we get into the winter months where everyone's kind of not going to eat outside at a picnic table and the weather doesn't permit it, it'll be interesting to see how it goes, and if we need a course adjust, we will. But so far, I think that they're working out just fine. So.
What kind of a heating system do they have in the construction?
They have like a ductless mini split system in them for AC. They also are heat pumps, so it does heat, but it has a secondary electric heater as well, so that in the wintertime, the ductless units sometimes don't keep up. They are really well insulated. They're like an R45 insulation full envelope, so that definitely helps. And we've noticed that the AC will be on in the day at 70 degrees, and when you come in the next morning and it hasn't run, and it's still nice and cool because we shut it off at night. So I think as far as that goes, we won't have to worry about employees being cold or anything like that. So.
All right, let's move on to the cemetery.
All right. Cemeteries, the last 2 budgets I've built, I always build out what I think it's going to actually cost to run the cemetery department, I guess, in general. And then the selectmen have chose to use capitals throughout the year to fund it. I think Lynn would say, please don't do that, like she just said, because it is difficult for both of us just in how we have to request the money. And I also think that there is an increase there due to the maintenance and repair for the 2 cemetery buildings, the one at Elkins and the one at Old Main Street. So that's covered within that budget because it's kind of its own little department. So there, maybe Lynn has a statement she'd like to make, it looks like.
So originally, we had put this into just requesting it from capital reserve because we had that big expense of the fence, and we had nowhere to put that from. In the last 2 years, we've tried doing any repairs and everything, and some of the repairs are just so minute, and some of these line items that I'm collecting them and then having to create packets to give to the trustee to give me money back for $400. So. My thought was if we put back into the operating expense, and then now you guys are agents to expend, so if something big comes up, we can certainly take it out of capital reserve, but it just seemed to make more sense to keep it in operating. You guys can obviously change that if you choose, But that was my ask of Sam, just put some numbers in there and see where we land, and maybe we can keep that in operating.
Okay. Yeah, because I had that question specifically if we were going to use the capital reserve, but I hear what you're saying.
I have to leave. I apologize. I have a doctor's appointment. Sam, your topics are very interesting. I'll be back.
Does that make sense? Do you have any question on that? We discovered that we had a tree fall on the fence, and then the fence in Old Main Street Cemetery really needed painting desperately. And we learned that we had this cemetery capital reserve account, but the selectmen weren't agents to expend, so we got a warrant article passed where we now can spend from that fund. But it sounds like it takes a lot of effort to pull that money from there.
Yeah, and for the small amounts that we were going after, it just didn't seem to make sense. Now, I think you guys did some work on clearing for,
Yep, that's
and
some
the chipper cost, I mean, that made sense to take it out of that fund. It was a larger expense, but for the smaller things, it just doesn't seem to.
It's a little harder
Makes
to
sense.
track too for us. Well, for me, I guess it's maybe easy for Lynn, but it's difficult for me to kind of figure out how I'm spending that budget that doesn't really exist. You know what I mean? So it does make it difficult. And I think in a sense of transparency for me to you, it's easier to do it this way because I can kind of say, you know, these budget lines include a leaf blower and a string trimmer and all the other things that you'll see in the narrative. So I think that it helps. So it also is a good prompt as well versus just kind of having blank lines that we're throwing something at. So.
Okay. Any questions on cemetery? Okay, let's move on.
All right, I believe it's highway administration.
Yep.
Okay, so highway administration, you'll see there's not really any big changes there or surprises. I would say the only thing that is most notable is under the CDL training. I've actually zeroed that line for this year, which is about a $10,000 savings. In the past, it has been $8,000. We actually currently have a person that's just about to enter into the class, which is great because it'll give us a CDL certified person at transfer station. But at this time, we have a full staff and everyone that needs to have a CDL has one. If we were to hire somebody in the next year that didn't, we would not put them in that class right off anyways because we would kind of want to like vest them as an employee and make sure that they're someone that we want to invest that kind of money in. So I'm not worried about that, you know, coming back and saying, oh, I wish we had that money in the CDL. It was a way that I tried to keep this budget down overall as well. There is no new employees within Public Works at all. Anywhere, the only thing you will see is that under part-time wages, that line has been zeroed, but it now has money in it. Lynn came up with this idea, and I actually really like it because when someone from transfer station works at the highway department, in the past it was kind of just like a wash because it's all Public Works. But we wanted to start tracking like how much time are we pulling someone from a different department? Because that could over time show us that if we're creeping up in that, where we're always pulling someone from transfer or wastewater, it may be time for us to hire another employee. And I've kind of talked about that maybe with you guys one-on-one, that it's really difficult in Public Works to kind of track when is it time for another employee, because I don't really have calls or services that are data-driven. You know what I mean? It's kind of based on complaints or compliments, I guess. So I'm hoping that this may be a way that we can kind of keep better track of that. And it was Lynn's idea, which I think has been great. So I'm hoping that will help us a lot. So overall, you're not spending more money. It's actually just more responsibly shifted. Yep.
Okay. Are you fully staffed right now?
We are.
Okay.
Yep. And as far as highway admin goes, that's really all I have. As far as statements, everything else I think has kind of stayed pretty close to what it was before. You know, some of these lines will look like a 25% increase, but we're going from $800 to $1,000, which is, you know, a contracted service or something like that. So I'm happy to answer any questions about highway administration before I move on.
Sam, how many full-time employees do we have?
In highway alone, you have 10. At Public Works as a whole, you have 17. 2 of those are part-time. So.
And how do you break up the other? You have 10 full-time highway administration.
Yep, 10 in highway administration, which includes myself and Nancy, who's my admin assistant. And then the transfer station has 3 full-time, 1 part-time. Cemetery has 1 part-time. Wastewater has 1 full-time. So. And then we have Matt, who's in facilities as well, so.
I'm sorry, you said wastewater has one full-time?
Yep, wastewater has one full-time, facilities, which is general government buildings, has one full-time, it just doesn't have its own section, so. I have the list, I think that's pretty much everyone.
And the town of New London pays that wastewater full-time employee, that's just only works for New London, isn't part of the New London Sunapee wastewater treatment plant budget.
Correct, yep, they are just a
Are-
town New London employee, yep, exactly.
And why is that?
I partly just how public works in general is built is that you have these separate, departments broken out so you can kind of see what they're costing you. As far as if you're talking wastewater in general, of that employee, Sunapee, I don't actually know how many employees they have at their wastewater treatment plant, but they have a treatment plant which requires a lot of certifications and things like that. We're a collection facility, which obviously goes to Sunapee, so our person does have certifications, but they're not mandated, and it's a little bit simpler, but it's just kind of a watchful eye on the system. We also have to have someone, if we have sewer main breaks, things like that, to handle those and kind of be in charge of them. So our wastewater operator is actually a supervisor, and is in the same line as like a highway foreman, because at times they're managing crews of 25 plus when we have emergencies and things like that, so.
And do they fulfill other responsibilities as well?
Yes, I would say 85+% of the time they are doing wastewater specific jobs. They do help in the wintertime plowing roads if we need it, if it's a large snowstorm. They also just help in general with overall projects. If we're paving or doing something like that where it's a little bit all hands on deck, the wastewater employee will get pulled into that as well, as long as they don't have something more pertinent going on. Obviously, we're not going to neglect a wastewater issue, but there's also times where your 10 highway employees are all dedicated to wastewater work for a couple days just to help them get projects done. That's kind of the beauty of public works, is where you have 17 employees that kind of all fall in their own branch of service, but they all pool together at times to get one job done, which is incredible and helpful, so.
And also that full-time employee, the cost is fully borne by the sewer department, which is required. But that's what gave us the idea, because whenever somebody from DPW goes to help in sewer, we would bill that payroll would go to sewer. And that's what kind of gave us the idea to start doing that through all the other departments. We also had 2 full-time people in sewer. And then when Sam took on the role of DPW director, he really said that it could be 1 full-time and then just pull as we need it. So that cost went down quite a bit.
Yep, and we haven't seen any issues related to that yet, and it's been working well, so that was a pretty significant cost savings. And, our employee at wastewater is a happy employee too, I think, most of the time. No one ever really wants to be in wastewater, but he does a great job, so, yeah. All right. The highway department, streets is next. This line is basically materials and contracted services, or services that we provide in general. So let me just get myself on the right page here. So about half of this budget of highway and streets is your paving services, which is $235,000 and has been for quite a while. That has done a great job keeping these roads in excellent condition, I think. Other things that are within there that are notable is like tree takedown service, equipment repair and maintenance, equipment lease and maintenance, repair and maintenance supplies, and then your sand, salt, gravel, culverts, calcium chloride. A lot of those are all contracted services, like tree takedown services. It's $2,000 a day no matter what we do. Sand and salt is a contract that we sign, so we guarantee that we have those. Gravel is something that we do price shop, but again, it's kind of like set fees, and we kind of know just on historic data how much gravel we need each year to keep these roads in the condition that they're in, or start to try to improve them a little bit. Same with culverts, things like that. So none of these are really drastic changes. They're just kind of adjustments in what we're seeing across the board through contracts that are coming through this year, and then kind of projecting out what that increase is going to be in general. So.
Yep, and again, the narratives were really helpful here. Because the calcium chloride, isn't that the stuff that goes on the gravel
Yeah,
roads?
calcium chloride is
The
what
dust?
goes on dirt roads to keep the dust down.
Yeah. So when I saw that decrease, I go, but then I read your narrative.
Yep, that's great. Yeah, so we did like an on-off year to try to keep the budget lower overall. Same with street painting. We're gonna try this and see how it goes for us. But we usually paint roads every single year. And what we kind of started to see was that the painting got a little bit built up in areas and started to look a little sloppy. So we want to say, and that's a service that we hire out. We're going to try to do it that we paint in the early spring instead of the fall, and see if we can get 2 years out of them, which did reduce the budget by about $15,000. So we're trying creative things to keep these budget increases less when we're seeing a large increase in salt or paving goes up and we have to raise that. I'm trying to see, okay, what service can we then, diminish a little bit to help offset that increase. Same with like bituminous products. We also realize that as we take on more projects as Public Works, like historical markers, beach projects for stormwater, sidewalks, all that, we can't accomplish the world. You can't conquer it in the sense of getting all of Public Works projects done and also doing all these additional services, because even if they're contracted out, we still have to oversee the project. So there's times that you'll see maybe like bituminous product will be zeroed because we think that we're gonna be too busy with other projects to handle that. And some people may say that it's, they're losing a service. Well, it's a balance, right? So we may be losing crack sealing this year, but in that year, you actually got a lot more sidewalks done. So you got a better service elsewhere, and then we'll catch up the following year, or we'll just adjust as needed. So hopefully is a creative way to keep these budgets from having larger percent increases while also providing a better service. So
Okay.
I would say that's highway and streets. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. Next up,
I just.
yeah, please.
If you don't mind just jumping back a little bit, you mentioned that we're currently fully staffed.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult is it for you to stay fully staffed?
I would say it's not, in the sense that Public Works has really good employee retention, and I think that's just based on the team effort, the diversity of the job, in the sense of you get to do a lot of fun things differently all the time. You're rarely doing the same thing. And again, I think it's just a really good team that's built on friendship, family, and a lot of other things that plays out well. And I think it's the accountability of each other, in the sense that, in the fire service and police service, I think you definitely have that. In Public Works, it's kind of the same thing, that you don't want to let down, a fellow person by calling in sick during a snowstorm and making them plow your route. And I think it's pride and ownership. I think that New London Public Works, I would challenge them against some of the best in New Hampshire or New England as far as plowing capabilities, grading roads, all the services that we provide, and they are very proud of what they do and take a lot of ownership of that. And I can show you a box full of awards that the crew has won from those skills that have been proven elsewhere. So, yeah.
And tell me, it may seem like a strange question, but certainly with our police and fire, the safety of our police officers, of our firefighters, is sort of oftentimes, as it should be, uppermost in the way we see things. In terms of the safety of our highway folks, in terms of they're dealing with large pieces of equipment, they're dealing with impressive cardboard crushing equipment, things like that. Mm-hmm. What do we do on a regular basis just to make sure that we're trying to look for any potential mistake that we might be making, anything that we might be overlooking, if you will, that might potentially put any of our employees at risk?
Yeah, I think that's a great question that doesn't get asked and is probably a little sensitive to New London. New London,
Precisely, yes.
Yeah, Public Works is one of the only departments, I think, in New London that has lost an employee on the job while working. And so that's something that the whole crew, holds very near to their hearts, and we try to take very seriously. So you'll see last year in my first budget, there was a really large increase to uniforms and safety equipment, and it was added to 2 of the other budgets as well, because I felt that there was a slight deficiency there, and the crew was kind of talking about that. They were kind of saying like, we got safety vests that are a year old, and we're not feeling like they're up to snuff. And so we really took that to heart. Kim, myself, and Lynn kind of sat down and said, what are we going to do about this? And took a lot of these things head on. I think in the preventative area, we send our crews to a lot of classes, trainings, and things like that, where they're always learning about new safety techniques like chainsaw courses and flagging school, driver school, all those things they go to on a pretty regular basis, and we try to sign them up for them as much as we can. I also think just kind of talking about the uncomfortable situations are one of the biggest things. And that's something that the crew takes really seriously. So they are accountable to each other in the sense of sometimes it's difficult to have the conversations of, hey, you got to put your vest on when you tell someone 3 times in a row, but we don't want another accident in New London. So I think that's kind of how we do it. It's accountability to each other. We also have tailgate talks every morning, which is kind of, we joke about them and what they're called, but they're actually recognized through like Primex or through T2 Center as a form of training for our crew, where we have difficult conversations, direct conversations, but also just overall like one of them, performance evaluations of each other and ourselves. Like, you know, hey, Sam, I think that when you're backing up, maybe you're going a little too fast when you're coming in the garage. And it's kind of that honest conversation that we're having with each other and then saying, what can we do to be better? So.
I mean, you know, I would just, you know, ask Sam if you would just always please keep that, you know, uppermost in your mind, and don't be shy about asking us, you know, if there's something we need to be looking to renovate or fix or change around, and it's going to cost money. If it comes down to the safety of our personnel, just like with our police officers and our firefighters, you know, I'm sure that I'm speaking for all of us when I say, you know, that is going to be a top priority always.
Well, thank you, and I agree, that would be my top priority, and if it was ever to change, I would not be sitting here, so.
Fair enough.
What's your plan to replace Mike Murphy? Not that he's replaceable, but.
So Mike Murphy's our highway foreman. He's announced he's retiring at the end of the month. I think that we have some good internal candidates from within. I was hoping to kind of do some internal interviews in the next week or two and kind of see who the best candidate's going to be there, and then hire that position from outside to, you know, fill that void. So it would be internal promotions to then probably hire someone a little bit lower, which may be a sidewalk maintenance person or whatever it ends up being. If someone from the transfer station ended up being the highway foreman, you know, we'd have to hire a transfer station attendant. Oftentimes in public works, that's when we probably see our biggest shakeup, where you'll have someone change from one department or from a lower position up, and then we get to bring someone new in, or you'll see people kind of moving laterally or upwards within public works in general. I know that I kind of benefited from that myself, in the sense that I went from highway maintaining sidewalks to a wastewater worker, wastewater supervisor, and now here. So I always think that, you know, while Mike is irreplaceable and has been a phenomenal foreman, it's an exciting time for public works, and the crew always kind of, I won't say looks forward to change, but we do look forward to change, because it's also fun taking on new people and training them and kind of bringing them up to speed. And I think that the crew in general really enjoys that. And, you know, internal growth is always good within a department, so. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're on to transfer station.
Yep, I think street lighting might be in between those.
Oh, yeah.
That is obviously for the street lights, it's the rental and the pole rental plus the electricity that they cost, correct? And sometimes that changes this year. It's just kind of what Lynn has projected for the increase in electrical need, but also needs are at.
Yeah.
We don't foresee us needing any new street lighting yet. So the last time we saw a change there was when we added a crosswalk at the Buckland Beach. We need to add a street light, and then you saw like a small blip there where it increased it, and then it's kind of stayed steady again. So if we were to reevaluate crosswalks, things like that, we may see change there. We're not projecting change yet. But. All right, transfer station. Pretty much stayed the same. The two most notable things were waste disposal went up, and it went up, where am I? 10%, which earlier I was saying that you'll see a 200% increase, and it's really only $200, where here the 10% increase is pretty substantial. Part of that is because the state of New Hampshire implemented a waste disposal surcharge, which is $3.50 a ton of every bit of trash that we bring to the landfill. That then goes to the state. Municipalities can get that back via credit or a refund. They haven't decided how they're going to classify it, but it can't be refunded or credited to the line. It would go back to the general fund. If I botch this, Lynn,
Okay.
feel free to cut in.
Because I had that question, because that was a big deal to Karen Ebel when she worked on this legislation, was that the town was going to be able to get this $3.50 tipping fee back. because the other entities that aren't towns that are dumping trash in our state, they're not gonna get that back, so, all right, I get it. So we're
Yep,
gonna
so you
get
will get it
but-
back.
but
It
it's
just will
gonna
be,
go- All right,
it'll be in a different area. Yep, so I still have to obviously budget for it, because if we were getting
Yeah,
it back and it could be
fair.
credited to the line, we'd probably be in the same spot, but I think
Okay.
it's notable.
Fair.
The other big change is maintenance and repair. Last year, I was really optimistic that I could get that number down and feel good about it, and I was wrong. And so I'm back asking for a pretty substantial increase there. And I actually think that kind of goes a lot to Rich's point about just trying to keep up with the maintenance of this equipment. The transfer station has unique equipment in the sense of cardboard compactors, plastic compactors. You also have a tractor trailer that has the most amount of mileage of any truck that we have, and we also have three trash trailers with walking floor systems. That those trailers are $200,000 each to buy, and then we have a cardboard trailer that hauls the cardboard that actually makes us money, but I thought that through some creative changes, we'd be able to keep that number down. It just isn't the case. Even in the brand new equipment, it's hard on equipment. Trash isn't something that is handled lightly, because who wants to handle trash lightly? So it's hard work on the equipment, and it just costs a little bit more than I was hoping it was gonna. So this budget kind of reflects more realistic projection of what I think it just costs to run the transfer station in general, so.
all right. You have a question?
I was just wondering, Sam, by any chance, do you happen to know what the ratio is between the weight of our recyclables versus the weight of the trash that we're sending to the landfill?
We do have that in a report. I do not have it in front of me, and I will admit that I'm not willing to take a stab at it from memory. I know that based on what we see at trainings and presentations that the state does, we are, I would say, on the forefront. We've done a lot of pilot programs between composting, paper recycling, textiles, all those other things. A lot of towns aren't doing that, so I think we have reduced our tonnage to the landfill substantially. I've talked about this a lot before, but we used to make 3 trips a week to the landfill. For now, at least 18 months, we have only made 2 trips a week to the landfill. And I mean, when those trucks are going to the landfill, there's about 20 tons of trash in them. So that's a pretty substantial reduction in what you're hauling to a landfill through these pilot programs or initiatives that we've done: composting, textiles, books, all those things. And a lot of those things make us money too. Textile, which is clothing, we make money off of when that gets removed. Cardboard is the same way. We make a substantial amount of money off cardboard. Tin cans, aluminum cans, all those other things, peat, plastics, all that. We make money off those, which is great. So not only are you removing what you're contributing to the landfill, you're also making revenue off those. And then that revenue helps us pay for the recyclables that actually cost us money to get rid of. Like right now we're recycling paper, but it's costing us quite a bit of money. But since the other, like cardboard and other areas, are making us money, it's kind of a wash. So, which I think is pretty great. You're getting to remove something that shouldn't be going to a landfill while essentially doing it for a wash, which is excellent. It's also helped us, when we purchased the new 1 ton for the transfer station, half of that money, almost half of it, was taken from the recycle revolving fund. So that truck was partially paid for due to the fact that New London recycles so aggressively.
So all of those different categories of recyclables we actually do make money on?
Almost all of them. Yep. Paper is, I believe, currently the only one that's not making us money. Some are just a wash, and then some are, you might be saving. If you were to say, paper is a little bit hard. I would have to really look at the number. But what we're saving in tonnage to the landfill may be equal or lesser than what it would cost, even though it's still costing you money to recycle the paper. Does that make sense? So the amount we're taking out in weight might still be a savings. I haven't run those exact numbers yet to know, but.
I was just wondering, do you think improved signage at the transfer station, sometimes I marvel at our fellow citizens' challenges seemingly to get their recyclables right. I saw one large container for a sheet cake which still had roughly 25% of the sheet cake in it that was put into the recyclable, which my recollection is that for whatever reason, that particular type of peat is not actually recyclable. It has to be a jar or a bottle, I believe.
Yep.
I'm somewhat neurotic, as you might gather, about such things.
Did you go to Public Works and see the new signs at the shop that we're waiting to put up? So
No.
we actually, the crew had ordered, Kenny, our transfer station supervisor, had gotten some new signs ordered to hopefully help with that, exactly. And we're gonna try to do some in-house initiatives as far as different signage, changing it, because I think people do become sign blind to things. And also trying to change the flow and layout of the transfer station, try to increase the parking, make areas that people can almost park and then know that they're going to have an extended visit because the transfer station kind of becomes that. But
I'm guilty of it.
aren't we all, right? I mean, yeah. But I think that may help too, because I think people come there, it's busy, they get overwhelmed, and all the signs in the world aren't going to change it. Because I know I'm a person that if I'm at, a bunch of bins and I got to figure out where I am and I'm overwhelmed because someone's mad because I parked in the wrong spot, it's hard for me I'm just throwing it in the hopper. I think we're all guilty of that at times. So we're going to hopefully try some in-house initiatives to better that. Also, our crew's kind of taking it on themselves to try to be better about educating public as we can. I mean, you can only help so many people at once, because sometimes you'll have 30 to 40 people at the transfer station at one time, and it's hard to kind of see everybody. But yeah, so.
One other thing I was just wondering about was in terms of, what we refer to as the swap shop, or some folks refer to as the New London Mall, which is my favorite. Would there ever be any benefit, to your mind, of creating a larger space in which,
I think,
Can I
yes.
finish? Before Ashley laughs at me, if I could just finish, and
Yeah.
then Ashley can laugh at me. I remember one time I visited a community that had something that was called Le Shed. And Le Shed was a very large pavilion, very impressive, with literally a clothing area, electronics, etc. And what was terrific about it, obviously, was that it was keeping this stuff from going into a landfill. And frankly, it was saving the townsfolk a lot of money, because a lot of this stuff was just in constant circulation. And obviously, we don't have a large space dedicated to that kind of thing. So now you can laugh, Ashley.
It's something that a former Public Works director had considered. I don't know the reason that they chose not to. It's something we've actually recently talked about again, was building a shed that's like still within the transfer station property, but off to the side. So one, it would improve circulation, but two, it would improve the perusing of the recyclables that someone might be looking to take, and get it away from where like actual recycling's happen, because it kind of becomes a hangout spot and people kind of are rummaging through things. So we thought that if we can put it still on site, but maybe a little bit off to the side in an area where people can park and then go into it, one, yeah, you're correct, it would probably increase the value of the items, and because they'd be seen better, but also it would get people away from where we're trying to do recycling and all that. So hopefully improve circulation, and then people wouldn't be so overwhelmed by so many people as well. So something we are looking at. I know that the transfer station crew would probably be really happy about that, because on like Fridays when we use that bay where the shop is, they have to take essentially everything out of there, either sort it or it does just get thrown away, just so then they can get in there to do the actual baling that they need to do of the bottles and stuff like that. So I think that overall it could be a benefit, and it's something that we're looking at doing. Again, that would probably be funded through our recycle revolving fund, which already has a decent amount of money in it. So something that we may be tackling sooner rather than later.
When you say a decent amount of money, how much are we talking?
Well, it varies. It's had anywhere from what? Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head right now. I think it's probably in the $6,000 to $8,000 range, if I remember correctly from the last time Lynn told me. But I mean, when you guys have swiped it at the end of the year and it goes down to $5,000, there's been upwards of $60,000 in there before. So that account can become quite robust at times. My goal is to not ever let you guys take money from it. So I'm going to make sure that I keep doing improvements to the transfer station and innovative ideas to improve recycling via using that money, because I think that that is the best use of it for us environmentally, us as a town growing, and just in general, financially, it's, I think, a good responsible way to spend that. So.
Awesome.
Great.
All right, next is this, I want to know why the landfill monitoring is going up. It's a contracted service, obviously, so.
Yep. They've changed the laws so that how we recycle waste oil is now different. So in the past, it used to be we would take waste oil at the highway department, it would get put into drums, and then contractors or companies or business people around would actually take the waste oil and then burn it in a waste oil burner. And so then it would become fuel, but it was free to us because we were essentially collecting it. They would take our barrels of waste oil and then burn it as fuel, and then we'd get these barrels back, and it was kind of just this back and forth. There is some risks involved in that. Obviously, if a truck was to get into an accident while transporting New London's oil, who's responsible for it? Those types of things. So the state, has cracked down on how they want that handled. And now it's like no commercial or businesses can bring us waste oil, but also it has to be picked up by like a certified company that's going to actually responsibly get rid of the waste oil. So it could still be used for like waste to energy. They could be using it for that. But right now there's too much of it. The state feels there's too much of an unknown. So we could be saying that, so-and-so is taking the waste oil to bring it to their shop to use as heat, but really they're dumping it on their dirt driveway because they don't want it to be dusty. And so this is just a more responsible way to handle it. So what we're going to have to do is at the transfer station, that's where the waste oil will now be brought to. One of the attendants will take the waste oil. They'll essentially dump it into a bucket to check to make sure it's clean, because if the oil is contaminated, we can't take it by law. If it is clean, it will then get dumped into a large container, which will then get pumped out like quarterly and responsibly handled. I don't think our waste oil has ever irresponsibly been handled, just based on the people that I know that have taken it, but it's too much of a risk, and it's now law that it has to be handled this way. The line, obviously, we've never had to do this before, and so looking into it and talking with the companies that kind of handle the waste oil, it seems interesting. If we can give them 275 gallons, which is the size of the container I think we're going to use, of waste oil, it's like $1.15 a gallon to get rid of it. If it's contaminated with 1 gallon or less of coolant, that entire 275 gallon drum then costs us $5.65 a gallon to get rid of. So that's why we kind of have this step of, we're not going to just dump waste oil directly into it. We're going to have the person or the resident stand there while we dump it into a bucket, ensure that it's clean, and then it will get dumped into the actual container. If it is not clean, it will get resealed, given back to the resident, and they'll have to hold on to it until hazardous waste day. So it's going to be a little bit of a process. I think it is going to slow down certain functions, but we don't really have any other option, and I don't think that it would be rather irresponsible of us to say that we're going to just dump oil in and risk the fact that it's contaminated. One, it does change how it gets handled. So if it's contaminated, it isn't going to get like broken down or refined as like a diesel alternative or heating oil. It then probably goes to waste energy, which I guess is probably still good, but it's not as responsible as it could be. So the budget kind of reflects, though, the complexities of and the unknowns of how this first year is going to kind of play out. So.
Okay.
And the contaminants that you're speaking of is primarily, you're thinking antifreeze?
Yeah, antifreeze, water, or gasoline. Gasoline is like a little bit tolerated, but water and coolant are the worst. Coolant doesn't have glycol in it anymore, but it's still, if it's being burned and stuff, releases a chemical that can be toxic and stuff, so you can't have it.
So just generally dirty oil is not a problem, though?
Yep, dirty oil, exactly. That's what they're looking for, is dirty oil. Or there's times where if oil sits on a shelf for too long, even brand new, it breaks down. And so we do get that kind of often where people just have old oil, things like that. That is still acceptable, so. Yeah.
Okay. I think we're all set?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is Sam doing the sewer? Okay, is that later on?
It doesn't look like it is in general, so we can hop to sewer if you'd like. It won't take me long. You'll see mostly a decrease in the operations of sewer due to, like we talked about, one employee being over there. The total to Sunapee, I think, is going to go up a little bit in percentage, which is normal. It was not, when I looked at the numbers at first, when I was told that there might be an increase, I was like, oh man, come on. But it was not abnormal. It was kind of just based on the rainy spring we had and then the dry summer. So I think that we're kind of, the peaks and valleys of what we're sending them is getting much closer in a good way, but we're still not at kind of a flatline consistency. Our system still ranges from, newer sections being only 3 or 4 years old of our wastewater lines to some of the sections still being 100+ years old. We are working on slip lining. You'll see that repeated in capital, that we kind of every other year are doing a slip lining initiative, and that is paying off big time in that percentage that you're sending to Sunapee. So that is definitely working out, and we're definitely reaping the benefits of that. So.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, you said slip lining?
Yeah, slip lining. So it's essentially like a,
What's a good question?
yeah, it's a
I
great
learned
question.
about it last
Yeah.
year.
You learned last. I'm learning, sorry.
No. So like the older pipes in the ground, some of them are clay, some of them are transite, and then some are plastics that just didn't stand the test of time. And so the slip lining is essentially a seamless fabric-y type pipe that essentially it's like a sock that then gets coated in a polymer, and then they use pressurized air to blow it into the pipes. They pressurize it so it expands inside of it, water seals the pipe, and then they steam cure it. And so when they're all done, they then send a robot down through. They cut out all the connections, like where a house connects into our sewer line. They cut them out, they pressure test it, do all those things, and you essentially have a brand new sewer pipe in the ground without ever excavating your roads or digging things up. And it's at a greatly reduced amount. I mean, it's a fraction of the cost of what it would cost to dig up these roads and put new sewer lines in. Especially New London has a very unique system because it is all gravity for the most part, and it is a collection facility. So we have sections of sewer line that are like 14 to 20 feet deep. One of the deepest sections in town is 40 feet deep. And when they installed that, they had like 2 excavators essentially on top of each other, digging a hole, just getting it deep enough. So if we had to excavate that again to replace that line, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars per, few hundred feet, versus with slip lining technology, for pennies on the dollar, essentially compared, you can get that line rejuvenated to new. And it's relatively new technology. It's probably been used for the last 20 or 30 years, but it's based on pipe materials that have been around for much longer, and they're just seeing it last time and time again. Hanover probably is one of the leading towns around that's done a really aggressive slip lining initiative, and it's paid off greatly for them. So.
And what did you say about the percentage that's making it to Sunapee in terms of the?
Yeah, so we send whatever gallon it is, let's just say 10 gallons a day to Sunapee. Of that 10 gallons, there's a certain percentage that is I&I, and that's inflow and infiltration. So inflow is where you have like a sump pump that's directly tied into the system, or like a catch basin, or maybe someone broke a pipe and it's just open and water's just naturally running in it. That's inflow. Infiltration is where you have lines that are just old and maybe roots have broken them and cracked them, and then water like slowly seeps in. But every percentage of your wastewater has some number of I&I in it. So if we're sending 10 gallons a day, 2 gallons of that is inflow and infiltration that doesn't need to be treated, right, and shouldn't be in the system anyways. So that's why we talk about that percent to Sunapee. We pay a percentage of their treatment because it is our wastewater, but it's contaminated, and it's contaminated with clean water, but we don't want to pay to have clean water treated. So we're trying to eliminate
So by
that.
doing this slip lining technique, we actually see an improvement in that?
Yeah, 2 years ago we saw, I think it was the largest decrease in percentage. It was like 5 or 6%, which is, tens of thousands, if not close to $100,000 a year that you're going to save. So
They were very jealous in Sunapee, too.
that they were.
They were.
So.
Yep.
Other than that, wastewater has pretty much remained the same exact as an operating budget. Just I think that percent increase to Sunapee is what you see in a change there. So.
All right. Now, what does our schedule look like for the rest of the?
I'm done, so you guys can do
You're
whatever you want to do.
My recommendation would be that we get through recreation, library, CIP, and then break for lunch,
Okay.
and then we'll start back up with administration.
All right. Sounds good.
Does that sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Because I know we have all the agency and lake people and all that stuff supposedly coming, and when are they coming?
2 o'clock.
Okay. She hasn't been, this is only the second time we've done this, so. An all-day budget session. Yeah. I forget what time we ended last year. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of a marathon, but. Okay. Okay, so we're going to do health and welfare this afternoon in the remaining sections. So, okay, so now we're in recreation, which is Page 16 in this packet.
Yeah, so still good morning. Glad to be here and talking about another year of rec budget. I will go over a couple notable increases in the budget for 2027, and then more than happy to field any questions you may have in other sections. Besides my salary, our biggest expense is waterfront staff wages. And this year, working at trying to do a couple different things to try to sort of streamline our services and best align them with the availability of our staff and the effectiveness of our staff. So we have two roles at the beaches. We have the beach attendants, and then we have the lifeguards. My suggestion, recommendation for moving forward for 2027 is to have the beach attendants be reduced from 7 days a week to 5 days a week, starting in July, and then reduce the number of attendants of average from 3 to 2, so that'd pretty much be 1 per beach, and they would be working from July 1st to Labor Day. And then a reduction of the lifeguards, have them starting the last day of the Kearsarge School District, which this year is predicted for June 12th to Labor Day, and then working 7 days a week from that last day of school. And that can kind of change. Sometimes they have makeup days, but this year it's predicted for June 12th, which is a Friday, I believe, and then working through Labor Day weekend. What we do is we have the beaches open Memorial Day weekend, and the bathrooms are open on the weekends, and then we will have, the last 2 years we've had, due to when our training has been, we've had the the lifeguards starting in early June, doing a couple weekends prior to school getting out, and then once school gets out, they go full-time from there. So we would be, the suggestion for this year is to not have them start until the last day of school and then go full on from there. I see it again as it's kind of like a streamlining of staffing, looking at our bottom line, but then also looking at still having a safe coverage, and also when we're kind of like consolidating it to the busiest time of year where there's the highest need from the residents for the beaches, and then also when our staff is most available. So that's my recommendation there. So that would be total this year for staff wages would be $58,940. Due to those changes, we would be looking at a reduction from last year of, I think, a little over $6,000. So that's waterfront staff wages. Before I move on to that, do you have any other questions on that?
Nope.
Okay.
Good.
And then the other
Thinking creative.
increase would be for conferences and training. Recommending a $3,000 increase to cover the costs of our. Sorry, keep going. Okay. Our consultant he's been working with myself in the town since I started in 2021. He plays a pivotal role in training our lifeguards, certifying our lifeguards, and then overseeing our swim lessons. So, and also helps me with facility questions, lines, anchors, things like that. He's been doing this for, 30 plus years, so he really knows all these things, and is a really vital resource to myself and our program in general to have really well-trained guards. He also does in-services for us over the course of the summer, in-services that we work with the fire department and police department to collaborate on, which is great. So we need to cover his costs, and then also cover the increasing costs of reimbursement for lifeguard certifications and recertifications. And when we do our preseason training, we do need to cover the costs of the Colby-Sawyer-Hogan pool, which is, during that late May, we can't do it in the water usually because it's still a little cold, depending on the year. So that is a fee as well related to our preseason training. It's important that we are able to offer those reimbursements for the certification costs. It's a really great way to get staff lured kind of in. It's a nice bonus for them. And when we have our rates of certification courses are lower than if you look at other places, they'll have a 2-year certification will be close to $600. So I feel like working with Len, we get a little bit of a discount there. He knows our beaches, he knows our staff, and he's been doing this for a really long time, and I think it's great for him to be able to do the certification of these kids, the skills checks for them, and then work with them over the course of the year, and also work with me. So I think that that's money really well spent. We've talked about the importance of safety for our employees, and then also safety for our residents and good customer service, and I feel like this is money well spent in that regard. So those for me are the two biggest increases in my budget. The third one was increase for lifeguard and swim supplies, and that is related to the replacement of 2 automated external defibrillators, which are needed at the beaches. Those are the ones with the pads that our staff are trained to use if necessary, and those are due to be replaced. I'm recommending $2,600 to replace both of those. I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have regarding the things I mentioned or any other part of the rec budget.
Putnam, did you do any of in-state conferences or trainings this year?
I did not. I'd like to, though. But yeah, there are some opportunities out there that I'd like to be able to take advantage of. So yes, I'd like to be able to do that.
All right, and you don't need anything in here for any events or activities that you've got scheduled? Those sort of pay for themselves?
They do, but then also under the special events, that is where we'll
That's
pay for,
Halloween.
that's out of there.
Right.
That would be something like stuff for Easter, candy for Halloween, various things like that. But I do also try to have the rec revolving fund, which is separate from the operating budget. That really where we have programs that we collect money for, then those reinvests into future programs.
Okay. Do you want to put a plug in for getting candy donations for the Halloween?
Yes, anyone here, you can go right out there when you get a piece of candy. I've been shocked by not to call out any names, but the number of people who just grab candy and don't even look at my little nice sign next to it. But yeah, we have a candy drive that we raise money or actual candy at drop-off locations throughout town to give candy donations to the people who are going to be involved handing out candy on the 26th, which is not this Sunday, but the Halloween event on the following Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. You can go out there, and if you do Venmo, you can do that. You can scan that and make a donation, or you can go to Colonial Pharmacy, the library, Hannaford's, or the town clerk's and drop off actual physical candy. The last date we're going to take it is on Wednesday.
And you have a plan in place to distribute that out to
Yes.
people on Main
Yep.
Street?
Yep.
Fabulous.
I've reached out to a lot of people, and if anybody hears from anyone who's in the zone that wants candy and that I haven't already reached out to, please direct them to me. But it's a great way that the community can give back to it, and candy, like everything else, is shockingly expensive. And we go through a lot of candy, but we're really excited for that event. Another great example of collaboration between the fire department, the police department, Department of Public Works, the folks in the main office. It's a big lift. It's great.
So we do distribute candy to the folks who live in that.
Yes, yep, and we also have reached out to businesses as well to be able to say, if you're contributing to it, we're not gonna offset all your candy costs, but we will give you a certain number of pieces of candy to try as a good faith offering to say thank you for being part of it, so then they don't have to foot the entire thing, and I know everyone really appreciates it.
Yep.
And I know people who contribute are more than welcome to say, are glad to be able to say that's a small price to pay for hosting the event.
Yep. Chief, do you have?
Just the Firefighters Association alone spends $800
Yeah.
on candy
Yeah, I think that is normal for many of the houses on Main Street to be spending on candy.
Do you have any, I know, do you have any other, I know, do you have any other questions?
That I did want to ask about is, have you had any trouble staffing the beaches adequately? Because I was concerned, as I'd mentioned to you in the past, when I saw, on a Saturday afternoon that Elkins was closed because there were, not closed, but there were no lifeguards on duty.
Yeah, so that is something that is always, the consistency is sometimes a moving target with staff, and trying to get them to be able to, they'll have doctor's appointments, they'll have college visits, they'll have any number of things that sometimes they are good about telling me about, and then other times they are not. So there were some disruptions this year where we did have to close the beach early because we didn't have enough staff there. We would be able to staff it from 9 to 2, and then we would have to close it early because kids, and some of the circumstances, kids had second jobs or things like that. So that is something we're always really working on, trying to get as consistent staffing as possible. But it is an issue, and I try to, we always have the signs up when they're not there, but it can be sometimes, given the nature of working with teenagers, that they can be somewhat inconsistent, but I agree that we always want to have it staffed as consistently as we can.
Tell me, do we track how many rescues we have at the beaches?
Yeah, we have any incidents and things like that, and we have the majority of things we have are small cuts or things like that. But yeah, any time that we would have any significant kind of intervention, we would be tracking that and listing that and following up about that. And we're always kind of talking with the staff, and I always talk with Len frequently about kind of what we're seeing, what we're not seeing, ways we can improve areas. So we're always trying to and have the guards to say, all right, so what are we working on? What do we need to continue to remind people about? What do we need to help people understand? And I think sometimes it is, maybe it's a behavioral issue or things like that. We've had support with police about some unruly young men this summer at Elkins who needed a little reminder here and there. But again, it's that kind of customer service and training and safety first that we really try to focus on as best we can. It's not always perfect, but we always try to improve and meet the needs as best we can.
I will say I got a lot of compliments on your staff this summer, not just from the one person that I usually hear from the most. I heard it from multiple people that you had a really good group this year.
Good. Yeah, I think it's we always want to try to improve, and again, they're not perfect, and I welcome any and all feedback from anyone in the community or in the town administration or employees about how we can be better. But again, I think it's just kind of finding that balance, and it's a short season, but it's an intense season, and like everyone else has mentioned, staffing wise, that I wish I could say that my lifeguard job is number one on their priority list, but frequently it's not. So I kind of have to work with that, but we had a good number of kids, and the kids who were there are, for the most part, excited to be there, excited about that role, and so I think that that's really what we want to continue to build on, and doing that efficiently and effectively with the eye on the bottom line, I think is important too.
And are we still providing canoes and kayaks at both beaches?
We are, yep, and that's what the beach attendants do. So I feel like if we had that service from Wednesday to Sunday, then, and we would be promoting that, saying that here's when boats are available, I think that that would be a change, but I think based on demand, I think that would fit. 5 days would be adequate for people, especially if they knew when to go. And the boat program is, I know a lot of people really enjoy it, but it can be kind of inconsistent depending on the weather, depending on need. But the people who enjoy it really do enjoy it, so I think it's worth continuing. I have some ideas kind of moving forward in years to come as to other opportunities we might be able to look at for providing a similar kind of service. But I think that it's worth continuing, but I like the idea of kind of streamlining it a little bit this summer. And if we find that people want the boat 7 days a week, and we get feedback from that, we could look at changing that for future summers, but I feel like this is a good, you know, kind of a good solution.
I appreciate the thought you went into for the beach staffing. It's good. All right. I think we're done. Yep. Thank you very much. All right. Richard, now, we just have a number for you. We don't have the detail of your budget, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think we have that. I know, that's why I said we have one number. Well, because they create their budget, that's all they give Lynn is the one number, because they create it. Yeah. No, we can't, but we go over it and. Actually, 3 or 4, yeah. Yeah, for all of us. Oh, 5, Charlie wants one too.
All right, I'll make it 6.
First question I have is, what did you use in your budget for increase for your staff?
Sure. So for our staff, which this budget does reflect a 2.5% step increase and also a 3% COLA.
Okay.
So we came at that number. I looked at the consumer price index at, I think, the beginning of August, and it was at 2.9%. That's kind of what drives that. I looked at it earlier today. It's at 2.94%. Based on where we are, you know, federally, I imagine that number will continue to increase as the impact of tariffs and other things continue to, you know, hit.
Yep. And remind me, Lynn, is that it is up to, is it the select board's decision to apply a COLA to library employees as well? No, the library can do, that's on their own. All right, I got it. So you've done a 2.5%, which is, you guys are on the step as well, and then plus a 3% COLA.
And they have, I'm sorry for jumping, they have historically matched what we've done for COLA, but they're coming in early at the 3, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's correct. So again, that 4.4% increase that you're seeing in the appropriation request, that already encompasses that cost of living adjustment and the step increase. So our numbers are a little bit different from the other departments just because it's already baked in.
Yep.
And that's really due to our process, you know, the personnel and policy and finance subcommittees of the library. They look at the numbers, the budget I prepared, and then it's voted on by the full Board of Trustees for approval before it's presented onward.
Right, so we can't really make any changes to their budget, Rich. Yeah,
That is correct. While we wait for those numbers, I'm happy to, you know, try to save us a little bit of time
Sure.
and speak
Yeah.
to the, you know, a little bit of the larger increases that we're seeing. None of them are what I would call particularly substantial, but they are there. Our biggest drivers of increases in expenses for this upcoming fiscal year are really in a couple different places. Primarily, electricity continues to go up. It's my understanding that Eversource will be increasing their distribution rates by 9.62%. So that's, you know,
you used?
that's what we use.
Okay.
We do get our supply from the town of New London. We, you know, follow that same supply, but the distribution, we don't have a lot of control over as we get it through Eversource. Outside of that, other, you know, larger areas of increase are downloadables. So for those of you who don't know, we offer different services online for, you know, residents and other users who, you know, have a library card. So specifically, oh, here comes Putnam.
Yep, thank you.
sir. So thank you to Putnam for that. Okay. Since I'm already talking about our disbursements, I'll just go ahead and keep on going with that until we can, cycle back to the receipts, which is the top, the green part of that sheet.
Okay.
So again, our downloadables, so that's things like Overdrive, which we get through the state library. We have a consortium with them. That's all based on usage by the town or municipality who contributes to it. So for us, it's about $5,000 per year that we contribute, and that is a different. We share those books with all other members of that consortium, so it's not like you have to just wait for it with users who are also in New London. You share it with other people. However, it's a license. It's not what we call a cost per circulation model. We do that through Hoopla, which is a different service that we ourselves subscribe to. And I've worked at 4 different library systems now, and I can tell you every single library I've worked at, every single year, Hoopla continues to gain popularity. People love it. It has a huge, it has a huge catalog, but it does use a cost per circulation model. So what does that mean? If one of our users checks out an e-audiobook through it, the library encumbers that cost individually. So let's say it's $4 for you to listen to War and Peace. We pay that. Whereas with Overdrive, that's a leased item. So we have a certain amount we pay for, access to this specific e-material, let's say War and Peace, the book, and it can be used in perpetuity for that licensing year. So it's cheaper for us, the library. It's less nice for residents because they may have to wait in line for that copy. So it's a primary difference between the two of them. Now,
Can get it immediately?
that's correct.
What is the typical cost, say, for a book?
It varies quite dramatically because they offer so many different things. For a comic book, it could be 99 cents. For a brand new e-audiobook that is 100 hours long, it could go up to $5.99, $6.99. What we, the library, do is we look at our budget each year and we kind of assess what can we encumber and what can't we encumber, and we can kind of limit what we allow in terms of like a maximum purchase, so to speak. So anything that's over $6 per circulation, we can't allow that. It's too expensive. The other thing that we do is limit the amount of circulations or items that somebody could check out. Like a library card can only have 4 per month. That's again a way to keep costs manageable. But it does increase each year, and we, tend to look at other ways that, maybe our DVDs, physical DVDs aren't circulating as much as they used to. People are streaming a lot more now. So we're going to lower that budget and then move it on to the downloadables that are more popular.
And if you do this thing with Hoopla, that's the name of it?
Hoopla. Mm-hmm.
Does that individual get access to that, say, War and Peace? Do they get access to that book in perpetuity, or?
So Hoopla themselves has their own licensing agreements with product makers. So if Hoopla we have access to all of Hoopla's collection, which is well over 100,000 items. They manage their own licenses with the individual, book creators or ebook creators. So it's a little bit different. Now with Overdrive, again, we get that through the state library. We have a lot more control over what we choose to license and what we don't choose to license. If there's something that we know is really popular, we may buy, 4 or 5 licenses, so 5 people can have access to that at a certain time. And then a year later, it's not as popular anymore. We drop it to 1 license, or we just drop it all together. So it ebbs and flows, and that's something the state library encompasses.
When you say a license, you don't mean for each book. You mean just overall that we have X number of licenses. Is that right?
For each book. For each book we buy.
Each book?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So when our share of that, the New London Library, it's around. We pay $5,000 into that sharing consortium agreement, but the state library does the selection and purchasing, and we get to vote on whether we would agree with what they're recommending, as do all other libraries who, purchase into it. It's a great deal for us. My past libraries I've worked at, we did it all in-house, and it's dramatically more expensive to buy licenses, both in staff time and dollars spent, compared to a consortium where we're all sharing and spreading the costs. But it is a difference.
And so did you say the whole thing for the state thing is about $5,000 a year?
That's our contribution
Right.
towards it. Yeah, so, for a smaller library, like say Sutton, it could be $1,000. But for somebody like, let's say Lebanon, it's in the tens of thousands of dollars because they just serve a much wider and larger group than we do.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets very detailed, and we haven't even gotten into, Canopy, which is our online streaming, similar to Netflix. We also do that, which is a similar cost per circ model. It's mostly educational material, so it doesn't get as heavy usage as we would love, and it is more subsidized in terms of cost. But it is something that we also pay into.
Okay.
So downloadables is certainly one of our bigger ones. Electricity. Supplies is another one that's gone up quite a bit. And part of the reason for that is just, again, the tariff impact, supplies, paper, protecting library material with covers, things like that. It's just gone up. So we've taken from other line items to offset that one. And the other big one too is just, again, the regular maintenance of the facility. Electricity is the large one there, but there's, like water costs went up a little bit, sewer costs that we get billed by the town once and twice per year. They just went up a little bit over past years, so you're seeing some of those encumbrances as well. And our treasurer, Tom Carley, just walked in, so as we get to the questions about receipts and the trust funds that Tracy has, he may be a good resource for that as well. But overall, the vast majority of our budget in terms of operating expense increases, it's personnel. It's that 2.5% per step and that 3% COLA. So, any questions about any of that?
I did just have a question. What was it? Yeah, are you fully staffed right now?
We are fully staffed. We have 4 full-time staff members, myself being one of them. Then we also have 9 part-time staff members. 3 of which are what we call regular part-time, which means they're 21 hours and they have limited benefits, mostly some leave that they generate, and then the rest are just part-time staff members without any benefits.
I'm good on that. If you want to talk about receipts.
Sure. So I'll pivot over to receipts here. So again, our appropriation request this year is a 4.4% increase. It's kind of my goal year over year to get that somewhere between 3 and 5%. Last year I came into it as a new employee looking at somebody else's kind of preferred budgetary style, and I did not think that it was realistically sustainable in terms of the capital reserve offset or the library offset. We just didn't have the money to keep doing that. But now we're in a much more stable position, which is good. We've already made those changes. The primary library receipts that are increasing would be our trust funds. Now, we only get the dividends or the interest off of the principal from that trust, and that trust is handled by the trustees of the trust. So Joe Cubitt and the other trustees of the trust, of which our treasurer is one of them. They make a determination on what is the best way to invest those monies, and we've kind of pivoted in the year and a half I've been here to be a little bit more aggressive, and you're seeing that with increased returns, which is offsetting our appropriation request each year, which is good. So for fiscal year 27, we're budgeting a $40,000 expected amount off of that, up off of $31,000 from last year. And 2025, we did quite well. So we're hoping and expecting that number to continue. And they're very, we've really pivoted to a lot of blue chip, investments that produce dividends, and we are seeing, a good return from them. And again, if there's any specific questions on that, I would defer to either Tom or the trustees of the trust as they manage those assets.
Okay.
The rest of the receipts, you'll see that they're lower, mostly because of just actual adjustments. I think in the past library directors were a little bit more bullish on what we could realistically pull in. However, we can't really make people lose library books and then have to pay for them, and we are fine-free. We don't charge fees for late returns or anything like that. And just we had seen a decline in gift giving last year. I'm happy to say that this current year we're already well past what we thought we would be, so it seems like maybe that was just a one-off. So again, overall, we're expecting the library's returns to be up 9.7% over the current fiscal year. So good stuff overall.
I'm good. Do you have any other questions?
Tom, I was just wondering, how much do we have in the trust funds for the library?
$600,000 in the Tracy Memorial Trust, and then $120,000 in the Tracy Memorial Maintenance Fund, so that's capital. It's a 600 that feeds into the interest rate.
The interest here, I mean, the dividends, the $40,000 is coming from
correct.
that. Yep. Okay. And 110 in the maintenance, okay. All right, I'm good.
All right, thank you both.
Oh, actually, if you don't mind, Richard, just one
Absolutely.
thing before you go. In terms of the building itself, what again are the major maintenance issues coming up that you see?
Sure. So if you happen to walk by the building today, we're actually doing our exterior repair project. That is progressing. We're still hoping to get done by the end of the month, but it's not a surprise to me whatsoever that we're probably going to drift a little bit into November. Things always take a little bit longer than you would hope. But that's really our last major repair that we have planned for the exterior of the building. Earlier this year, we already completed the roof. We're also going to be installing a new rain diverter over that historic main entrance. That's a little add-in that we're doing with this current project. So we hired Frank Anzalone in June 2025, shortly before I came on board, to do a full assessment of the library exterior and really look at what we need to maintain.
So I'm sorry, that would have been June 2024 then?
I'm sorry, June 2024. Right. And we're just now finishing that project. And that will encompass the entire report that he provided for us. Since I came on board, again, it's been 15 months that I've been here, there's been a significant amount of maintenance projects that I've undertaken. There was a lot of deferred maintenance that just did not happen, and we're finally getting to the other side of it. Right now, the workers who are repairing the exterior trim, they actually just ripped out a lot of the failing trim around the the turrets on the main front of the building. And not surprisingly, they did find rot inside because it just had not been, repaired and maintained to the level that it needed to. Not a surprise. We kind of expected it would be there. That's why we're doing this project. Moving forward into other years, and we can talk about this in greater detail during CIP Capital Reserve. Next year, or this current fiscal year, we'll be looking at the parking lot and the curbs, which are in need of replacement and repair. And then the year after that, we'll be looking at an interior renovation, which is really ripping out the old carpet, fixing cracks in the walls, fixing some moisture problems from the water intrusion that we're just now addressing. And then really what I'd love to do also is go through with a greater lens on Americans with Disability Act standards. Even if we could just get some of the exterior pipes that are sticking out, that constitute tripping hazards, get appropriate trailing signage that's in braille at a certain above floor finish. That would do a lot, I think, to make ourselves as AD compatible as we can, while noting that it is a historic building, and until a major renovation would occur, we don't necessarily need to meet full standards, but we should do our best. We obviously have a little bit of an aging population here, and making sure that they can access the building easily and safely is paramount.
Okay, all right,
All
good,
right. Thank you both.
thank you. Okay, library.
I think what we might do is break for lunch now and then start with CIP after
Good
lunch.
idea.
So all the lunches are on the table. If you forget which you ordered, I do have the list from Casey of what folks, and it sounds like if there were add-ons to any meals, I think, Jay, they couldn't do your apple. Sounds like you got chips. No, I don't. I mean, yes, I would, but no.